into Grimm's Gates of Horror. My name is Grimm, and this is your new haven for all things horror movie related. And today, I'm going to be doing something a little different. I have this new concept that I want to try where I am going to be spinning a wheel, and whatever it lands on, that's the movie I'm going to be watching. And I'm going to do it 5 times every week. And and if like a new horror movie comes out, I'll throw that into the mix as well. So for this week, I did Terrifier 3. And next week will be Smile 2. The week after that will be Your Monster. And I wanted to just test this out, see how it works, see if y'all enjoy this, to let y'all know what horror movies I'm watching, and help you guys explore some horror movies that you haven't seen yet. So I'm going to start off with the ones I didn't like and to the ones that I love. Starting off, we have Demonic from 2021. So Demonic is a horror sci-fi hybrid that explores the themes of familiar trauma, supernatural possession, and the fusion of advanced technology with demonic. The movie is directed by Neil Blomkamp, who is best known for his work in District 9 and Elysium. And in Demonic, he uses a blend of experimental filmmaking with a focus on virtual reality, psychological horror, and Blomkamp's signature use of high-tech visuals. The story in Demonic follows Carly Spencer, who is a young woman estranged from her mother, Angela, due to a traumatic event from their past. Carly is deep-seated with anger and unresolved issues with her mother. Carly learns that her mom is in a coma and is in the care of a high-tech company called Therian, and they reveal they are experimenting with VR to enter the mind of coma patients. And as Carly agrees to the experiment, she enters the virtual reality to speak with her mother, but soon realizes supernatural forces are at play and have made her commit her past actions. And as she dives deeper into her mother's subconscious, the lines between the virtual and real world become blurred, and she realizes the entity that possessed her mother found a way to travel between the real world and the virtual. The movie tries to use Therian's hidden agenda as a twist, as the researchers aren't studying brain activity but are investigating demonic possession, and the technology they've created is used to identify and exorcise demons in an effort to merge spiritual possession with high-tech solutions. And the organization is portrayed as some type of paramilitary group that is blurring the line between religious rituals and tech innovation, which as a premise sounds very interesting, but the way they execute this plot line and twist just did not work for me. As the story unfolds even more, it becomes clear that the story mostly depends on Carly's relationship with her mother. The trauma Carly experienced from her mother's past and the lack of closure between them drives the emotional core of the film, but most of the time, the story just falls flat. Blomkamp's use of visual effects in this movie that are unsettling, not from the horror elements, but because of the low quality of it when they're in the virtual reality. The movie uses volumetric capture to create the reality and gives these glitchy and distorted looks to create an unsettling feeling, but like I said, it's more cringe and cheesy than actually scary. The whole VR gimmick seems to be used as a way to distract the viewer from the badly written story. And all I can say is that Demonic was an ambitious attempt to merge sci-fi technology with supernatural horror, but at the base of the story is a flat and stereotypical exorcism horror story that is generic at best. Add that with the slow pace and use of visual effects, Demonic probably stands out as the worst horror movie of 2021. A complete F for me. So the next movie I'm going to be talking about is The Funhouse. Is a 1981 slasher horror movie directed by Tobe Hooper, who is best known for directing the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is one of the classics. Even though The Funhouse isn't as big of a success as Texas Chainsaw, the movie has gained quite a cult following over the years for its mood, thematic depth, and Hooper's direction. The movie holds an important place in 1980s horror as it stands out for its carnival setting, psychological underpinnings, and focus on suspense rather than just body count, which is something that Hooper did with Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It has that slow burn effect, and there's not as many kills as you would think in the first one, at least. But there were also people who thought the movie lacked some visceral excitement like typical slashers because of the slower pace and can feel like the movie drags up until the killings start, which I did feel while watching. The story follows rebellious teen Amy, who defies her parents by going to a carnival that has pulled into town with her boyfriend Buzz and their friends Liz and Richie. Thinking it would be fun to spend the night in the campy Funhouse horror ride, the teens witness a murder by a deformed worker wearing a mask. Locked in, Amy and her friends must evade the murderous carnival workers and escape before it leaves town the next day. The story focuses around the theme of otherness, which is represented by Gunther, who is the deformed, monstrous figure and carnival worker. His appearance and behavior is unpleasant and twisted, which makes him a feared person, even in the context of the carnival, which was traditionally associated with freak shows and the unusual. The movie uses this idea of being trapped in a space with something so different and monstrous, looking to provoke the fear of the unknown. Didn't really work for me all that much, as the practical effects on Gunther just came off as cheesy. One thing I will say is that the carnival setting in this movie really gave that creepy and disturbing vibe, and I think that has to do with how the carnival is perceived as a place for fun and entertainment, but the old ideas behind carnivals are more twisted and sinister. The carnival in this movie is basically a metaphor for social hierarchies, as Gunther and his father represent the outcasts and insignificant individuals who exist in the edges of society. The carnival is often a place where these outcasts and individuals were exploited, and it was where they were able to hide in plain sight without having to be afraid to be themselves or to be looked down upon. And the Funhouse really showed that with the creepy animatronics and visuals within it. The movie, Amy, who the protagonist, faces multiple challenges that symbolize the transition from innocence to a deeper awareness of the world's dangers, which we've seen be a trope in slashers, whether it's Sidney Prescott, Laurie Strode, Tara Carpenter, and so on. The decision to stay in the funhouse, which she thought would be harmless, leads her into a nightmarish reality that forces her to grow up in order to survive and make it out and face situations beyond her control, which I thought she wasn't given enough to do or enough screen time in this movie, as it felt like once her boyfriend and Richie, who is Liz's boyfriend, show up, they were given more dialogue and personality, and just seemed they were given more to do, which I thought was odd since Amy is the protagonist that this movie revolves around. The relationship between Gunther and his father is also a small subplot in the movie, as Gunther is portrayed as a victim of his father's cruelty and exploitation. His father uses his deformity to his personal gain, and when Gunther loses control and kills the woman, his response is to cover up the murder. And this dynamic echoes themes of abuse, control, and how family ties can trap people into cycles of violence, abuse, and dysfunction. As I watched more of the movie, I began to realize a lot of the horror elements in this movie were focused on exploitation, whether it's the carnival's use of freaks or the teens' curiosity to witness forbidden things like the sexual encounter and murder. Or it could even be like a double entendre and is calling out the audience for watching all of the violence unfold, and plays with the idea of voyeurism and draws attention to how we as horror fans are complicit in watching the characters suffer. Just like how people who go to the carnival or circus for freak shows and pay to see the grotesque, which when you put it that way is pretty impressive. And the way this movie was directed and written, when you think about that, and the way this movie kind of portrays that is pretty impressive and incredible. The way Hooper was able to capture that within this movie, it just shows why he's such a classic and memorable horror director. One gripe that I have when watching The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is how slow it feels, but I'm now realizing that Hooper's ability to create tension through the slow build-up, combined with the occasional bursts of violence, is just the ultimate way to get audiences locked into the movie. Because instead of just trying to do cheap jump scares like here and there and just having a full body kill count, it's more scary and it gets you more invested when you slowly build up to the kills in like the final act. Kind of like how Halloween kind of does the same thing if you think about it. I feel like that works a lot more to create that fear, to feel that evilness that is lurking around, and you just know and anticipate that something bad is going to happen. But I just feel like this movie waits too long for any of that action to start happening, which makes it feel dragged out. As for like the first hour of the movie, it's just the kids walking around the carnival, playing games, riding rides, and just enjoying the carnival and what there is to do. And it just feels dragged out. Like, I am able to understand and appreciate how Hooper focused on mood and suspense rather than sheer gore and violence. But for me, the creepy dolls and animatronics, yeah, they do give off a creepy vibe and give you that unsettling feeling, but it just didn't do enough for me to feel threatened or scared for the characters. One thing I would also like to point out that I thought about more as I was writing this review is that the film makes a subtle nod to Frankenstein, not only showing us scenes from it, but Gunther wears a Frankenstein mask through the movie, kind of symbolizing his monstrous nature, but also that he is more of a misunderstood creature, driven by primal urges and manipulated by the people around him. Overall, the Funhouse is a slasher film that delves into themes of exploitation, voyeurism, and the loss of innocence while creating its unsettling atmosphere, which sets it apart from other horror films of its time. With Tobe Hooper's direction and the movie setting, it's an intriguing entry in the horror genre that gives chills and thought-provoking subtext. However, the slow pace does make it drag, and the movie lacks anything that feels threatening to the characters, so with that in mind, I give the movie a B-. So moving on to the third movie I watched is Blood. Blood is a psychological horror film directed by Brad Anderson and stars Michelle Monaghan and Skeet Ulrich. The movie blends elements of horror with intense family drama, focusing on the extremes a mother is willing to go to protect her child. The story revolves around Jess, played by Michelle Monaghan, who is a recently separated mother and nurse who moves with her two children, Owen and Tyler, to her family's isolated farmhouse to restart their lives. Jess, who has recently battled addiction, is trying to rebuild her relationship with her children. But things take a turn when Owen, her young son, gets bitten by the family dog after it mysteriously becomes rabid. Owen starts showing signs of a strange illness that goes beyond just typical infections, and as his condition worsens, Jess finds out the only thing that seems to heal him and keep him alive is consuming human blood. Driven by the desperation to save her son, Jess becomes increasingly isolated and paranoid, making decisions that put her moral compass into question. She goes to horrifying lengths to find blood that threatens her sense of right or wrong. Her devotion turns into a descent into madness as she is willing to do whatever it takes to keep him alive. At the heart of Blood is the theme of motherhood and the sacrifices a parent would make for their child. Jess's arc throughout the movie highlights the emotional and ethical dilemmas of doing whatever it takes to save her son, and the question is, how far is too far when it comes to protecting a loved one? And one of the most intense things in this movie was seeing Owen getting bit and then him having a seizure at the hospital. I just have to say, both Michelle Monaghan and Skeet Ulrich played off of that. They just did that so well and made you fear for Owen's life. Jess's history with addiction in that context in this movie plays a big role in the story, as her past struggles with dependency are mirrored in the new obsession and devotion to keep her son alive through dark and extreme ways. There's a sense of loss of control both in her personal life and over her son's fate. The theme of addiction is not just about substance, but about forcing himself to save Owen at any cost. Another way to understand this is when someone is battling with addiction, it's kind of difficult for them to try and get clean and sober for themselves. Usually they try to do it for someone else. Like for Jess as a mother, she probably wanted to get better for her kids, to be there for her kids, and to take care of them better, and to just be a better mother. So she's kind of like switching her dependence on the drugs to depending on her kids for motivation to get better and to stay clean, to stay sober. And I think when you put it like that, it actually helps show that part of the story where there's themes of addiction and being so desperate to save her son's life because that's what drives her to stay clean, and that the theme of addiction is not just about substance, but about depending on her son Owen and saving him. The film also uses the farmhouse as a metaphor for Jess's growing isolation from society, her own morality, and even from her family. The isolation that occurs seems to cause some psychological tension, mostly due to the character having to use her own blood for a good part of the movie. So it makes her kind of blank out. There were scenes where she would be at home and then suddenly she just wakes up and she realizes she's at work now. And I think that was from the immense blood loss that she went through trying to feed her son so he would stay alive. But I think the movie does amazing at letting the viewer teeter on whether her actions as a mother are justified or if it crosses an ethical line, because the tension mostly lies in her judgment as a mother, and her actions might be monstrous, but on the other hand, they stem from love and desperation, and this whole dilemma is what keeps the viewers on the edge of their seat through the whole movie, and wanting to see whether Owen lives or not, or if Jess gets away with what she's doing. I also thought Michelle Monaghan's performance helped ground the supernatural elements that the story tries to add in, but because of her performance, the movie feels more raw with human emotion, which makes it feel more personal and relatable. I feel like when they started to give subtle hints into the supernatural elements with like some tree, it kind of like made it feel less real, less grounded, and I'm glad that they didn't go too much in that direction. They never really explain the supernatural elements in this movie. They are introduced, that is shown in the trailer, and they use it in the marketing, but it just doesn't play as a key factor in the story, besides probably being the cause of the illness and where this like disease or whatever came from. I feel like the pacing in this movie will be slow for some, but the pacing allows for a slow build of dread rather than relying on traditional jump scares. Brad Anderson really uses psychological tension to create an unsettling atmosphere, along with using the setting of the farmhouse mixed with the cinematography to add feelings of impending doom. Like it's just a matter of time and Owen's situation will only get worse, playing with the viewer's sense of empathy and fear. I just also can't forget to mention how incredible Skeet was in this movie too. He really had some emotional performances in this movie, like especially towards the beginning, and like just the performance he gave, even though he's not in this movie a lot, like his presence is known, and Skeet is just a wonderful actor, and I hope we see a Skeet Ulrich resurgence in the film industry, because he's just amazing. Overall, Blood is a tense, emotionally driven horror film that takes its exploration of love and desperation and makes it a thought-provoking horror entry, while also being both heart-wrenching and terrifying when it comes to the moral dilemma that is at stake. I give Blood a B+. Now, this next one is probably going to be a long one, and that's because I'm talking about a movie that I've been looking forward to for quite some time. It's called Psycho Goreman, and I finally got around to watching it. Psycho Goreman is a dark comedy and sci-fi horror movie directed by Steven Kostanski, and takes absurd humor and mixes it with over-the-top violence, all while paying homage to the monster and sci-fi movies of the 1980s and 1990s. With its mix of family dynamics, special effects, alien villain, Psycho Goreman has acquired a cult following since its 2021 release. The story follows two siblings, Mimi and Luke, who accidentally unearth an ancient malevolent alien overlord from an alien prison buried in their backyard. The alien was once known as the Archduke of Nightmares, and was sealed away after attempting to destroy the universe. When the kids find a gemstone that gives them control over him, Mimi, who is the more dominant of the two siblings, names him Psycho Goreman, PG for short, and forces him to do her bidding. Pandora, who is one of the Templars, learns of PG's release and travels to Earth to finish what was started eons ago. And I just have to say, PG's interactions with the human world provided so much humor within this movie, as his dark and apocalyptic nature goes against the demands of Mimi and her friends, like playing dodgeball or dressing up in human clothes, which is something we see in E.T., and forcing him to be in a rock band with her friends, which I thought was just hilarious. And even though it can be seen as cheesy and cringy, this movie really did give off the same tones as E.T. and movies like that. Psycho Goreman plays with the tropes of science fiction, horror, and family adventure movies. The dynamic between PG and the kids is very similar to E.T., The Iron Giant, Big Hero 6, and the one it really makes me think of is Little Monsters with Howie Mandel and Fred Savage, which is one of my favorite movies from my childhood. But the movie totally twists this trope. Instead of PG being a gentle and misunderstood alien, he is an unapologetic, evil being who happily describes his genocidal past. The movie mixes the violent tones of PG with the innocence and absurdity of the kid's nature, and creates a hilarious hybrid of the tones. The main story mostly focuses on the sibling relationship between Mimi and Luke, as Mimi is often commanding and cruel, while Luke is the passive one and is the target for Mimi's bullying. Their relationship with PG becomes a reflection of these dynamics, with Mimi's control over PG, which amplifies her need to abuse the power she holds over PG. Luke's arc involves him standing up for himself and challenging Mimi's authority, as she is kind of the more demanding and dominant one, and he's scared to confront her about it, even as she is backed by an evil alien warlord. The movie uses their sibling rivalry to explore themes of control, power, and growing up. Both PG and Pandora represent extreme forms of power, but neither is clearly good or evil. PG is a self-proclaimed villain, but his honesty and straightforwardness makes him strangely sympathetic, especially compared to Pandora, who hides behind her moral righteousness while committing atrocities. This moral ambiguity. This moral ambiguity satirizes the classic good versus evil narrative found in many sci-fi stories, suggesting both sides of the cosmic conflict can be equally destructive. Aside from the classic nostalgic tropes, the movie thrives on an absurd humor and is obtained by the contrast between the cosmic horrors that PG embodies and the boring everyday world of suburban life. Mimi's confidence and her lack of concern for dangers PG represents adds to the comedy factor. And let me tell you, the dialogue in this movie is filled with just deadpan humor, where PG delivers apocalyptic speeches only to be interrupted and dismissed by Mimi. There's just other things like this, like there's quotes like some quotes in this movie, and I'm going to say these without context. One of these quotes, and this is straight from the movie, and I'm going to do it just like how they do it in the movie. I do not care for hunky boys, or do I? It's just so hilarious. Like the way that they do in the movie, and then as he violently kills this person, Goreman says, "The horrors you have just witnessed cannot be unseen. Your young minds will carry this until it consumes you in your miserable death." He says this to two young children, and it's just hilarious. The gory and cartoonish visual gags, practical effects, and ridiculous scenarios truly contribute to the movie's offbeat tone. Another one of the major reasons I enjoyed this movie so much is because of the practical effects and creature designs, which brings PG and the other alien creatures to life with detailed prosthetics, makeup, and puppetry. The way that they do it in this movie is clearly to pay homage and are reminiscent of the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, which I am a big fan of. One of my first movies that I became fixated on was the Power Rangers movie from the 90s. That movie was everything to me when I was like 4 or 5. Psycho Goreman kind of has this Ivan Ooze look to him, mixed with the look of the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. I also noticed a lot of the fight scenes felt a lot like Power Rangers action scenes, with like the choreography and like just the way they were shot and edited, which gave me such nostalgic and a classic feeling, and it helps enhance the campy retro vibe of this movie. The exaggerated and cartoonish gore and violence really reminds me of Beetlejuice or even Little Monsters, making them feel playful instead of disturbing. And it's kind of like what grown-up Power Ranger fans would want, which is like a bloody of like Power Rangers movie, which is kind of like what this is, but like from like the villain's perspective in a way. I feel like one of the mixed opinions with this movie is the central character of Mimi, as her lack of empathy makes her a force of chaos, similar to PG. She can be seen as selfish and obnoxious, while on the other hand, she can be appreciated for how she dominates every situation she's in. Her relationship with PG is very fascinating, as she kind of mirrors his personality traits, but in a childish and innocent way, where he's more genocidal and how he always results to violence, while hers is more childish and innocent and telling PG to kill her brother, and then he's just like, wait, never mind, I need him. That also plays into the humor. She even treats PG more like a pet or toy than an intergalactic ruler, which helps create the comedic dynamic where the ultimate evil and world destroyer is bossed around by just a little girl. Overall, Psycho Goreman is a wild ride that balances grotesque horror, absurd humor, and heartfelt moments, making a unique and different entry into the comedy horror genre. By taking the familiar tropes of intergalactic villains and turning them into a story about family dynamics and childhood imagination, the film just creates a world where over-the-top violence and cosmic destruction are just another part of growing up. It's a blend of practical effects, campy humor, and moral ambiguity, you know what I mean, which make it a standout, especially for fans of retro sci-fi and monster movies. Psycho Goreman gets an A+. And for the one y'all probably have all been waiting for, Terrifier 3. Terrifier 3 is the third installment in the Terrifier series and is a Christmas supernatural slasher written and directed by Damien Leone and stars Lauren Lavera, David Howard Thornton, Elliot Fulham, and many more. This movie was everything I wanted in a sequel to Terrifier 2, and this was my most anticipated movie of this year. Like, I've been so excited to check this movie out. Actually, no, Your Monster is number 1. which you can go check out October 25th. This movie was just really bloody and gory. It also gives hints to the background and lore behind Art the Clown and gives us more perspective into Sienna's relationship with her father. The movie picks up 5 years after the events of Terrifier 2, where it's now Christmas time. Sienna has been dealing with her trauma and grapples with these visions she's having and experiences further mental and emotional deterioration. And I have to talk about how incredible Lauren Rivera is. Like, she was able to bring the emotion and terror out of Sienna, and it really almost made me want to cry for her, like tear up in the theater, because you could just see the emotional and mental damage and pain she has endured, and how this has basically been haunting her and terrorizing her for 5 years. But we also see that Jonathan, her brother, is now in college and is trying to move on with his life. And my only gripe is I wish we got more screen time with this character. They kind of shift him to the side to bring in a new character, which is their cousin Gabby. Because Sienna goes to stay with her aunt and uncle for the holidays, and her cousin Gabby, who is given a bigger role and is kind of given what Jonathan's role was in the second movie. And as much as I did enjoy the character of Gabby, especially with how incredible and talented the actress is at that age, I just really relate to Jonathan a lot, and I think a lot of people also did too, and thought he was a great character to have in the series. Okay, but now that I talked about that, I have to talk about how amazing David Howard Thornton is as Art. And I just found myself laughing way too much in this movie. And I'm so glad I was not in a theater where people found that strange, because everyone in my theater was laughing along with me. Especially at the gory scenes and how Damien and David incorporate dark humor into the scenes. It just got me every time. This movie is 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and the pacing of this movie made it feel like it was under 2 hours. Like an hour and 40, an hour and 50. Like, my only gripe with this movie is I wish we got more into the story elements, besides a few hints and vague teases. But I just know Damien is cooking something up. And I feel like we will get a lot more in Terrifier 4. Since he says there's going to be a Terrifier 4, and then he's not sure if Terrifier 4 or 5 will be the last of the series. So it does seem like Terrifier 4 will dive more into the story elements and try to start to wrap up the story and explain the lore and like the backstory behind Art, and also how Sienna's father plays into it. And it just seems like the main focus of this movie seemed to be the over-the-top kills and gore, which I am in no way complaining about, because it was amazing. But it's clear the story is taking us into a direction, and I feel like if Damien gives us more story in the next movie instead of dragging it out more, because I've already seen people complain and tweet out that this series is just nonsense, is just senseless gore and violence, which we know, us Terrifier fans know that's not true. But it will just help the story feel more satisfying and smooth, in my opinion. And one thing I keep saying is how Terrifier 1 through 3 feels like Art's trilogy, while Terrifier 2 through 4 is like Sienna's trilogy. And if Terrifier 4 is the last movie with Sienna, or just in general, I feel like it would be a great way in the third movie to wrap it up into. And just like Randy Meek says in Scream,
the past will come back to bite you in the ass. Whatever you think you know about the past, forget it. The past is not at rest. Any sins you think were committed in the past are about to break out and destroy you.
And I feel like that is going to happen here. And I feel like they've been teasing it for a while. And overall, I give Terrifier 3 an A- and an 8 out of 10. But yeah, I do think Psycho Goreman was the best movie of this week, with Terrifier 3 coming in a close second. But yeah, let me know what y'all think about these movies down below. Do you like them? Do you not like them? I would really like to hear your thoughts down below, and what you think about these movies, especially on Terrifier 3. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to join the Grimpire, and to keep up and turn post notifications on to keep up with my weekly videos. I'm trying to post every week on either Friday or Saturday, as these videos are kind of like a weekly wrap up of the movies I watched this week. I'm trying to watch 5 horror movies a week. My socials will be down in the description below. I'm mostly active on my Twitter, but I'm trying to be more active on my TikTok and on my Instagram as well. So if you'd like to, you can go follow me over there. I haven't Snapchat as well, but I'm thinking about getting rid of that. I barely use it. But yeah, I would also like some feedback as well. Let me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. If you like this new thing, if you like this new segment I'm trying called Little Wheel of Horrors, I would really like to hear some feedback on it, what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong, and what I can work on mostly. But yeah, hope you did enjoy. And if you did enjoy any of these movies, I will have links to them down below. And go check out Terrifier 3 in theaters right now.